Welcome to Three-Eyed Haven, the Grand Haven Tribune's Game of Thrones podcast. This is Matt DeYoung along with...
I'm Alexson.
And we're here to talk about Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 4. So we're on the heels of the battle against the dead, the Battle of Winterfell. We start off and we're kind of reminded in a very stark fashion who died, how they died, the scope of the toll that this battle took. And we kind of jump into this episode kind of how we have in the previous several, Alex, where what's happened, remind you where you are. But I think when we take a look at this episode as a whole, that theme is kind of thrown out the window. And I know that's something that you'd really like to talk about.
Yeah, so we start off at a very slow pace, which this season so far through 3 episodes has established, where you've got these kind of lingering moments with characters and it's taking its time. There's build-up for that battle, and then the battle itself takes a good long time. We're setting up the next act, and then suddenly...
And it had some really good scenes doing it.
And some good stuff, that we'll talk about. Yeah. But you get to 2/3 or more through the episode, and we kind of just nosedive into this battle, into some huge, heavy moments. Our characters are suddenly far-flung across the world already.
Sure.
And then... ultimately right at the gates, and I felt like that was a real detraction from what we've grown back accustomed to. The end of this episode was more like the previous season, where suddenly there are dragons in the north, and things are moving across the board without really knowing. It's just kind of confusing as to how the logistics of it work, which is something you really enjoy and appreciate about this show.
Sure.
The season opens with seeing a massive army marching to Winterfell, and we don't really see any of that logistics, which I guess you could argue is plotting and boring, but I think that's what is enjoyable.
Perhaps we need to jump to like an Indiana Jones theme where we've got like the little airplane flying across the map with the little red dots. So we know, because
theme music.
This is difficult. I mean, it's difficult. Westeros is a created land, so it's not like we know. It's not like the United States, so we kind of know where things are, right? It's difficult to kind of figure out where things are unless you really take a look at a map or pay really close attention, and you've got to be pretty hardcore into it to want to study a map of Westeros to understand where Storm's End is versus King's Landing versus the Eyrie versus all these different things. Now, most of those are thrown out the window now. We're pretty much focused on Winterfell and King's Landing. That's basically all we've got left. But when you think back to the very first episode when Robert Baratheon's crew pulls into Winterfell, they talk about the fact that they've been on the road for like a month. And it certainly didn't seem to me like it's been a month since we left Winterfell and we're standing outside the gates of King's Landing today. So I agree. They haven't been very good at doing this the last couple seasons about showing us how we get from here to there. And granted, we don't want to have to watch the whole thing. There's got to be ways, though, to hint at it, whether it's somebody's beard is bigger, something that shows that some serious time has elapsed and show what kind of commitment's been made to get from here to there.
We have at this point seen the title sequence a million times, so we understand the importance of place, but how those places are connected, like how do we get to the sea from Winterfell? I don't know what the answer is. Like, I don't know how, and then what is the sea route that you take? How do you get there? They're all of a sudden just ships by these rocks, and we're meeting the enemy. They're having one of the strategic military discussions with the map laid out in this episode again. And at one point, Sansa questions Daenerys, well, should we wait a few weeks to replenish our resources and let our troops rest up? And so if we're going to discuss timeline, you've got a fortnight here potentially, or Daenerys maybe wants to do it in less time. Could it take less time? I mean, how long has it taken? I'm just confused about that.
No, you can't look away. You can't get up and run and grab a drink or something and come back and all of a sudden, hey, I thought we were just like hitting the road. How is now a dragon screeching with a giant bolt in its chest? Sorry, jumping ahead a little bit. But it certainly did go from this very relaxed, and I won't say last episode was relaxed, but this very measured pace that was very, I think, satisfying to people who were really hoping to see this and the character builds and everything, to boom, all of a sudden, we've got some action to get to, let's jump right into it.
Well, the battle probably took a handful of hours, so we did spend a good amount of time. So we do start off mourning the dead. I think we get another moment mourning Jorah, which I know I'm complaining about the opposite thing here, but I did feel like we've already said goodbye to some of these characters. Like, I felt like off the bat we could have moved on a little bit and at least maybe gotten on the road. We do say goodbye to Jorah again, and we light these funeral pyres.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. I mean, I thought the scene where, you know, each person kind of goes out and observes the person that's died that maybe knew them best. So Sansa, who we know has kind of reconnected with Theon, goes out and is mourning over his death. And I thought a really cool scene is where she pulled the Direwolf of Stark pin or whatever it was, brooch out and put it on his jacket, just to kind of really wrap up the fact that he has come full circle, and he began the season or the series as a Stark. He ended as a Stark, and I thought that was really cool. And then you also kind of see the scope, just these huge pyres of wood, and you never see anything close up to show you how many people might go on. And I think we speculated last week just how many of the Dothraki and the Unsullied may have died. But it certainly gives you a scope that, wow, this took a pretty huge loss. I mean, a pretty drastic and devastating loss to their forces. And, you know, from a military standpoint, but too from an emotional standpoint, I mean, you just are really hit by what's been lost in this battle and the toll it's taken. And I thought that was a cool scene, just to show what happened in that battle, what the outcome was. And we did win, but it certainly wasn't a win without cost.
We kind of go from there to a feast of sorts and a lot of drinking and celebrating.
Absolutely. I mean, they have the drunken night of celebration, which would, of course, follow that. You know, some funerals, they mourn the dead, and then they jump forward and say, but let's celebrate the life, and let's celebrate what's left. And so they're pouring drinks. I mean, Jaime says to Brienne, if you can't, we just defeated the dead. If you can't have a drink now, when can you? So there were some really cool scenes. I mean, my favorite character, I think, of all this year has been Tormund Giantsbane, who, you know, this is a little later, but he's lamenting with the Hound about Brienne dissing him, and he's crying, and the Hound's like, get off me. But Tormund's all sad, and it's just so great. And I mean, there's some real great interactions. I mean, you've got Jaime, Tyrion, and Brienne playing drinking games with Pod, and they're, you know, kind of having a good time. And then all of a sudden, Dany, out of the blue, calls out Gendry, so you're the son of Robert Baratheon. And everyone's like, oh no. You know how she tends to be around people that may have supported her enemies. But no, she's like, I name you Trueborn Son and heir or Lord of Storm's End. And it's just like, that was kind of weird. Like,
that was a power play, I think, though, to try to win over the good graces of all of these various groups that who don't really like her at this point. And that's further established when Jon gets a lot of praise and love when she's sort of sitting there at the table, just sitting there stewing with her Starbucks cup of coffee.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, that move may have worked in the long run, but it certainly doesn't seem to do much. I mean, she's clearly the outsider here. She's clearly sitting there, and it's very obvious as she's in her white dress and everyone else is wearing the dark colors of the North, and she stands out. She looks different. She's clearly not comfortable in this environment, in this setting. She tries to smile and act, but we've all been to a party with someone who doesn't know anyone else there and is not very happy to be there. And
I think we've all been that person at the party.
Perhaps, yes. It was painful for her sake to watch, but then, you know, Jon's getting, you know, all the guys are high-fiving Jon, and Tyrion's over here with Jaime, and she's kind of all on her own. I thought that was a very telling scene just to set the stage for what's coming next, which is, you know, her and Jon finally having this conversation about where do we stand now, right? Because she obviously knows his lineage, assuming she believes him, which I don't think she's really arguing with the validity of his claims. But they have a night, they kind of get together. Well, first, you know, Jaime goes off with Brienne. Different people are kind of hooking up. These two end up in the room together, and it looks like, oh, maybe, you know, they start kissing. Maybe they're going to be just cool with it. Maybe they're not even going to talk about it. But then Jon is Jon, and he kind of stops, and he's always the one who has to kind of be the party pooper and kind of the buzzkill. And he's like, "Hey, listen, we need to figure this out."
Yeah, I think that this hasn't been resolved, though. They
No.
didn't really come to any agreement, so she's obviously still leery that he might have so much support from the other Northerners and so on that maybe he could overtake her. She doesn't really have a lot of supporters left, really, by the end of this episode.
Well, Gendry pops the question, hey, I'm no longer Gendry River. I'm Gendry, Lord of Storm's End. Come be my lady. Come on. Like, let's go. I got a castle. You can be the lady in my castle. And as we know from way back when, that's not what Arya wants. That's what Sansa used to want. Arya wants nothing to do with that.
She really takes offense to the term lady. She doesn't want to be a lady, and that is true to her character. Also, the fact that she's totally absent from all the festivities is really telling of who she is. I also like the moment where her and the Hound are on horseback, and I kind of wanted to just see that. Let's go back to season 2 or 3 or whatever when they spent the whole time on horseback.
The entire
together.
season, yes.
Right. But yeah, she's kind of a lone wolf, and that's who she is.
And so, yeah, they're riding off to King's Landing, and clearly the Hound has said he's got some unfinished business. He wants to go take care of his brother, who's now the zombie Kingsguard taking care of Cersei. And Arya clearly still has Cersei atop her list of people she wants to kill. And they both basically say, you know what, we're not going to stick around here. We're going to go. And I think there was a very telling line when they both kind of said, we don't plan to come back. Like, they realize that they're riding off to kind of fulfill what they feel is their destiny with no worries about what might happen beyond that.
One of the last people to leave Winterfell also is Jaime, who, after his hot night with Brienne, he decides to.
I think everyone kind of wanted to see, like, everyone kind of was hoping that would happen. Just
there was some build up to it,
yeah,
I think.
For sure.
And I think he's another one of those characters who, like, you love him sometimes, you hate him other times, and at this point you think he's become loyal to these friends in the North, and then total betrayal. From what we see, he jumps on his horse or gets ready to go, and Brienne comes out.
Yeah, he gets the news that one of the dragons has died, and that basically they assume Daenerys is like, who has previously been listening to her advisors to say, we don't want to kill everyone in King's Landing. We want to try and take the city as peacefully as we can. Well, I think she's now beyond that, and it's going to be a reign of terror from the sky. And Jaime realizes it, and he's got to go. Now there's some debate. Is he going to try and help his sister? I mean, it was just last episode that he's saying, yes, your grace, and calling Daenerys queen. And he clearly has some friends here and worked hard to get into their good graces. But who knows? Is he going back to help Cersei? Is he going back to try and help everyone else? But he does have this really telling line where she says, you're not like that anymore. You're good. And he says, I'm not good. I pushed a kid out the window. I was willing to kill every person in a castle, including little kids, to get back to Cersei. He's like, basically, she's wicked and so am I. Which was really like, he's been climbing this ladder of, our affection and getting higher and higher on this list of like, oh, we kind of like him. And then did he really take a plunge off the cliff? It's kind of hard to tell. But
he might be going back with the intention of getting back with Cersei and coming to her aid, but I still feel like he's going to, in those final moments, kill her. He is, after all, the Kingslayer. Yes. He could also become the Queenslayer quite easily. He would fit that role fine.
I think so. And who wouldn't want to see him and Brienne end up together at the end? We never know. I mean, is this show in the next 2 episodes going to have any happy endings? And I don't think so. I mean, clearly we're not worried about, long-term relationships. I mean, one of the most disappointing aspects of this to me was Jon Snow leaving Ghost. So if you've seen this all the way through, and we've talked about it before, the books do a much better job of explaining the relationship between the Stark kids and the wolves. The shows have really kind of pushed the wolves out the last several seasons. And I get it. Like, if the wolves aren't going to be a part of it, the dire wolves aren't going to be a part of this going forward, that's fine. But for Jon to look at his wolf with scars and blood and everything, I mean, you could tell he got the crap beat out of him in this last battle. Somehow
Which
he's
we
still
didn't see
alive.
happen.
Yes.
So that
Somehow
was
he's still
disappointing,
alive. And he looks at him and says, he belongs in the north, not in the south. Take him with you, Tormund. And, like, the wolf's sitting there, like, whimpering, and he takes off. Like, this was, like, his best friend through thick and thin. Why would you just abandon him without even, like, at least go rub his ears and say, like, hey, buddy, see you later, go with him or something. Yeah. Rub his belly, I don't know.
Well, the wolves
but it was just
were initially an omen because there was a runt discovered that was for Jon. So the wolves had purpose and they had to be there. Because there's meaning throughout this story. Like, characters are there at the right time, the right place. Ghost was supposed to be there, so now he's just going to go right off into the wintry sunset. Like, I don't really buy that. I think that's not too cool.
No, I was mad.
Yeah.
It was disappointing. I mean, you can't put a pretty little bow on everything.
You can't.
But it could have very simply been like, hey, see you, come here, buddy, like, go with him. Like, I just wanted, like,
just a hug or
I just wanted something. I wanted something.
He needed a biscuit.
So that may be the last we've ever seen of Ghost. It may be the last we've ever seen of Tormund. I mean, we're here with only 2 episodes left as characters
and Sam
leave.
as well.
And Sam.
He says goodbye to Sam.
Sam and Gilly. Yep. Perhaps these are the last we see of these characters. And it would be probably easier because it's not like we can have everybody. I mean, I'm certainly not envisioning a final scene like the end of Star Wars after the Death Star, Return of the Jedi, after the Death Star blows up where they're all back together. You know,
the party scene.
Having a party scene.
Like getting Star Wars.
Yes.
That are
I'm not envisioning anything like that. Like, we can't come back and have everyone together in a room who's alive, happy at the end. Like, that's not where we're looking.
I also don't expect a bunch of multiple endings like with Lord of the Rings either. I don't think they'll time jump super ahead into the future either with next generation of Starks or something. I don't think we'd get that. So
I certainly hope not.
I think perhaps a queen will fall or something to that effect, and somebody will be on the throne. That's I think where we're going. So we say goodbye, and then Jon and whoever, we don't really see the whole crew, but they just sort of leave, and then all of a sudden we're on a ship.
Yeah, we should real quick jump back to Jon talking with his sisters, because before he leaves, he has a conversation with them. Obviously, Daenerys basically begged him to bury his secret and never talk about it again, the fact that he's a Aemon Targaryen. He's not willing to do that. Of course he's not. He's honorable. He can't lie. He can't, to not tell anybody would be a lie. And Jon's not going to do that. So he goes back. He makes his sisters super swear, pinky swear, whatever it is, tells them. And it was kind of an interesting scene with Bran sitting behind them. And Bran kind of looks at him and says, "It's up to you." And Jon says, "Tell them." So then we see Sansa, and we know she doesn't like Daenerys, and she's talking to Tyrion, and those two have actually developed a bit more of a relationship, I feel like, this season a bit. And they're talking, and she says, "Do you really support her?" Something like that. "Well, yeah, I support my queen." And she said, "What if there's another choice?"
Right.
And I think that is a real turning point where it's like, wow. She's telling him, now she put it in his head. He then tells Varys, and Varys basically says, "How many people know this?" And he's like, 8. And he's like, "It's no longer a secret. It's information."
Yep, and so that's where this is the beginning of this big jump, which I actually loved this scene. This is probably my favorite moment, was on the ship. You have Varys and Tyrion discussing the throne again, which really just takes you back to the core plot in this series, which is just
the Game of Thrones.
The Game of Thrones itself. These advisors and political figures who are having secret meetings with each other and discussing who should belong and who should not, and if they don't have the right person on the throne, how do they mitigate that? How do they manage them? How do they last it out? And so they're starting this all over again with potentially Jon, potentially Daenerys, and I think that's such a good setup.
Well, Tyrion certainly seems like he's backing Daenerys, but Varys clearly, and we've seen Varys jump from one to the next to the next to the next.
He says he's loyal to the throne itself.
To the realm.
To the realm.
And basically whoever he feels is best for the realm. And to his point, he feels that Jon's better than Daenerys to fill that role.
And he's right.
And I think
that's my opinion, but
my wife's favorite character throughout has been Daenerys, but at this episode she was kind of like, she's not putting a very good foot forward. Like she's clearly
She's the worst.
and intentionally. Like I mean,
Yes.
there's a reason for this, right? She doesn't look very good right now.
No, and we've seen her make some mistakes the past season or so, and
Some of that being listening to Tyrion, but
right, but she's at times been ruthless and heartless, and she's murdered civilians or ordered them killed. We've seen her do horrible things, all to reach the throne, and it's all for her own gain to get to the throne. And at this point, she just seems totally ineffective as a strategist or political leader. Her advisors aren't really doing a good job for her either. But
No.
even when they are, she takes matters into her own hands, thinking, "Oh well, I have fire-breathing dragons." And I saw I think a Twitter post that was like, Daenerys blew a 3-dragon lead.
yeah,
There's a lot of basketball analogies to this, but that was
Exactly.
perfect because you're right. She pretty much had it in the bag. 3 dragons, come on.
yes,
You got this.
If she would have, and you know what, if she would have just right off the bat, the moment she got to Westeros, gone and torched everybody, she would. But she didn't. She went up north. She went and helped out against, the White Walkers, and to her credit, did that, but at great cost. And so now we're here, and this is another one of the scenes where, if we've watched this show long enough to know that, so we've got Missandei and Grey Worm standing on the bow, and there's that romance between them, and you see them reach down and kind of interlock their hands and hold hands. And I think there was a scene in the first episode where they talked about, if they survive all this, they're going to go to the beaches somewhere and relax. And I looked at my wife as soon as they did, and I said, something bad's going to happen, because
She's
this is too nice of a moment.
Yeah.
And a half a second later, you hear the dragon screaming, and it's like, it was actually kind of a cool scene. Cool is not the right word. A stunning scene, but effective, because all of a sudden you see this dragon with the most unexpected thing ever. Like there's a giant bolt sticking out of its chest, an arrow or whatever. It's like they're flying over the ocean. Where'd that come from? It was just stunning, and I think it held that shot for just long enough to where it's like, what am I looking at? Like, am I seeing this right? And then the next one pierces its side and then its throat, and then we see Euron Victorian with the Iron Fleet with these giant rapid fire massive scorpions firing these huge bolts of death into the sky, and it's like, oh no.
My jaw did drop when the dragon got hit, but I was also like, where did this come from? Like,
Yeah.
Like, we didn't see this coming.
No.
And it wasn't for, I guess the shock value was there, but it was it kind of left me frustrated, because
It was
I felt
so
like
out of the blue.
we needed to see where the ships were lined up and what was the plan, and then this was the dumbest plan we've perhaps seen, because she goes flying in to try to breathe fire on these ships, and that's just not a good strategy.
Especially
she could have come around the other side of
Yeah.
the rocks and would have smoked them. There's no way they would have turned those
First they're
things
in the
around.
sky. How did they not see the other fleet of boats over there? Like, it seems like if they're close enough to shoot you with an arrow, the dragons would have seen them. Like, so, and we're not trying to poke holes in everything here, but there's just some frustrations, because to me, okay, these boats are big, slow boats with these big guns on the front.
They're ships, yeah. They're
Fly around behind them, they're done. No, instead Dany takes a
She
full
had cover.
frontal.
She could have gone low under the rocks and smoked them.
These things aren't like heat-seeking missiles, right? They shoot one thing straight at a time, and it seems exceedingly easy to me to just like loop around behind them and.
This is the ultimate
Yes.
Monday morning quarterbacking.
Yes, exactly.
But we get to do that.
So I guess I didn't just witness my baby dragon shot out of the sky, and I'm sure her emotions got the best of her, but that was kind of crazy. So,
But
then
now
the other
we know
thing,
that she's so driven by emotion, and that's the problem.
and we also know that they're so vulnerable. Like,
Yeah, it's apparently pretty easy to take one out, which I think is kind of unrealistic, because how
But
could you be so accurate with one of those things?
yes,
These dragons
Yes.
should be better at maneuvering.
yes. So one of the dragons is gone. You see this the ship that Tyrion's on just get shredded by these bolts, which, I mean, these things must pack a punch, because, I mean, they're just ripping through, I mean, destroying the fleet, basically. And, I mean, they're firing them in such rapid succession. And this was the second time this episode I thought Tyrion was goner. We didn't really talk about it, but another great scene.
Yeah, of course we forgot another one.
Bran comes out of the blue.
So much randomness to... Yeah.
Or Bronn, excuse me. Bran and Bronn are a little close.
Yeah.
Bronn, the assassin, Tyrion and Jaime's friend from before, comes in out of the blue as they're having a beverage and sticks the crossbolt in their face. And I thought it was a warning shot. I thought it was going to take one of them down. I mean, and so basically Tyrion, the ultimate negotiator, kind of says, well, what'd I tell you? I'll always pay you more. And he's like, you don't have anything more to pay me. I'm getting River Run. He's like, how about the Reach? How about, he somehow finds a way to offer him more, even though it's something he doesn't have any control of. So at some point, hopefully he's going to be able to write this check.
Does a Lannister always pay his debts?
That's what they say, but Tyrion hasn't paid. I mean, Bronn always says, like, that scene where he saves Jaime from the dragon and he says, they don't get to kill you. Until I get my money, I'm the only one that gets to kill you. Now, he did pay him, and Bronn lost the money, I think, in that instance, in the dragon attack. But that was an interesting scene, so I thought one of them might be a goner there. I thought Tyrion might get it here on the boat, but he survives.
Where did Bronn come from? How long of a horse ride is that? I guess the ship, the destroyed ship, they wash up on a beach, which I guess, I mean, I didn't really know where they were, so they kind of were just on a nondescript beach, but you find out that they're okay, except for one of our characters is missing.
Yes. Missandei, who is Daenerys's, I guess if she has a friend in this world, that's her best friend. And we've seen earlier that she doesn't have many friends, so that's a big deal to her. It's also Grey Worm's romantic interest. So, and Sir Davos has clearly shown that he has feelings for her. So she's someone who, she doesn't quite make that major character list, but she's a high minor.
She's been there,
right? She's been there for quite a while.
Long, yeah.
So she's captured. I assume she drowned, but no, she was taken by Euron Greyjoy, and we see her a few moments later perched on the walls of King's Landing, which has now transformed into a really cool looking fortress with giant scorpions mounted on the tops of every wall. So clearly they've been busy while Dany was up in the north. And I think this does lend a little bit to the timeline that we talked about. These aren't something they built overnight. They clearly have had months to prepare in the travel to and from the north in the battle against the Whites.
We haven't seen them very much. We haven't seen them doing all this preparation, but we could have easily assumed that they would have stocked up and been ready for it.
Done something, yes.
Right. And, I mean, not to keep poking the holes that are there, but obviously we have this group with Daenerys and Tyrion, etc., kind of standing here, a handful of Unsullied. I think they could have smoked them. I think they could have launched some of those bolts and pretty much taken them out at that point.
Absolutely.
But I think it's pretty strong to see Tyrion come and make his case to his sister.
So he talks first with Qyburn, the hand of Cersei, and Qyburn's not really playing ball. So he goes up and talks to Cersei, and she's got her hand up, and all those bows are aiming at her. And fortunately, all the archers know that when she makes a fist and puts her hand down, it doesn't mean shoot, because that's what I thought it meant. And I thought Tyrion was about to turn into a pincushion. I guess that doesn't mean shoot. I don't know what shoot means, but I guess that means put your bows down, and lucky for Tyrion. But I thought it was interesting. I was really curious when he talked about her being pregnant, what Euron thought, because how would he know that she's pregnant? Euron just found out. So he's got to be saying, hey, what the heck? I thought I just was responsible for that. We don't know. We assume that we heard originally that this is Jaime's baby. I don't know if that's going to come into play.
Jaime maybe told the Northerners or told Tyrion.
Yeah. So Tyrion goes. He makes a plea to his sister. It's clearly not going to happen. And then we have this really kind of sobering scene where the Mountain takes his sword, basically lops off Missandei's head, and you see Daenerys, and this is maybe her most effective piece of acting throughout the entire series, where you see on her face just going from pure shock, terror,
not just fury and anger, but fear.
And
she goes through a gamut of emotions. And so does Grey Worm too. I thought his performance, they were both just so shocked.
They both basically said, "This is how it's going to go. All right." it's on. And
it's on.
They're not now looking for the end game, the long, the long-term well-being of the kingdom. They want to kill Cersei.
They're going to do what it takes.
And they don't care what it's going to take to get there.
What do you think it's going to take? How do you kill Cersei? How do you break through? I mean, I would dare not use a dragon.
I kind of look at it as this. Those big scorpions, I think we're calling them the giant mounted crossbows, they're not fast, right? It's not like they're swiveling around and can track you as you're going fast. Like, they're a fairly stagnant weapon. I would think you'd come straight down on top of them and torch them all. And I mean, we saw that the dragon fire works basically like a strafing run. It just demolishes everything in its path. Who knows? Maybe Gendry, the blacksmith, will come up with a protective chest plate for the dragons. Maybe they'll come up with something like that. Or, maybe they have enough troops. I mean, I don't think they have enough. I can't imagine it's just going to be a full frontal assault on a city.
I think we'll need some assassins to sneak in somehow.
Yeah, so we've got Arya, and the feeling here is that Arya and the Hound, and, we obviously have Sir Davos, who's proven he knows how to sneak people into places, could come into play, getting them into the city. I mean, he already snuck Tyrion in to go meet with Jaime and Cersei previously, so that could come into play. There's a lot of ways this could go, and
I expect that we will see some civilians die, though. I think that after that season or that episode ending moment, I think that our characters are too enraged with vengeance to really care about keeping those civilians alive.
Yes, well, clearly Tyrion's line that was kind of great was, "We know that you hate them and they hate you, and you're just using them as fodder to protect you." And she doesn't bat an eye, but
exactly,
it's true.
That's exactly why they're there.
She's proven that she hates everybody, basically, right? She does not care about anybody except her children. I mean, she's paid someone to kill Jaime, so it's does she have anybody that she likes other than Qyburn seems to be her friend, and the Mountain? If you're not a tool,
and they're both monsters.
If you're not a tool to further her progress, she does not have any feelings for you at all. And that's been her character throughout the entire series. She's been ruthless. And, I mean, she destroyed the entire Red Keep full of Marjorie Tyrell and everybody else. I mean, blew the entire thing up with...
She massacred people.
Without batting an eye.
So she's got to go.
I think she will. I mean, I don't foresee a way for this to end without her dying. But who knows? So, yeah, that kind of wraps up the episode. I mean... There's a lot to it. We probably missed a couple scenes because
we were all over the place.
Yeah, there's just so many things that happen. But I think we're really set up now for this battle, which, last time we were set up for the Battle of Winterfell. Now we're set up for the Battle of King's Landing. This one doesn't have quite the, heart-stopping, terror that the other one brought with it. I think we'll get more of a
mix of some action and some drama in this one.
I saw a tweet that came out yesterday from the Game of Thrones Twitter, and it basically, I think, said, "Fight together, die together." And that's not a very promising omen for any of our favorite characters either, because I think we'll probably lose a few more of our favorite people here going forward. I mean, they're going to be, we've already left a bunch of them back at Winterfell, but the ones that did come, I think it's really going to be a pretty ruthless next episode. I will say the 80-minute episodes I kind of like. I mean,
I do too.
It
an hour is almost too little for this show.
For the scope that goes on, I think it's really effective. I think they do a good job of keeping me. I mean, it's not like it got over and I was like, man, that's been a long episode. No, it got over and I was like, we're done already? I thought I had another 20 minutes to go. So I'm really looking forward to the next two.
I know I complained a lot about some plot holes and some pacing issues, but this is their story, and I'm excited to see what they have to say. You could do this infinitely many ways. It's their story, so we'll see what happens. If you don't like it, you can go watch the first few seasons.
We watched on Netflix. Have you ever seen the new Bear Grylls Choose Your Own Adventure show?
Bear Grylls, yeah.
Where you have to choose how you want him to go about these things. It's almost like that. Well, we could have chose this or this. We don't get that choice. We don't get to pick whether he eats the termites or the giant slug, or whether he brings a slingshot or a grappling hook with him, which is another story. But those are really fun if you're looking for a fun something to watch once Game of Thrones is done. We don't get to sit there with a remote and pick do you want Jon to go with Daenerys or do you want him to go down the King's Road? I mean, they make these decisions and we just sit back and watch and enjoy it. Well, thanks so much for joining us. We will be back next week to look at season 8, episode 5, which will be the second to last.
The penultimate.
Yes, thank you. That word had too many syllables for
There
me
you
to
go.
pull off. So the penultimate episode, and just the excitement continues to build around it. So thanks for joining us.
We'll see you then.